first of all, I want to thank you all for coming and very much appreciate your interest in the certificate and the application process. I'm Barbara Boudin, and I'm the director of the Institute for the Study of Diplomacy. We established the certificate about 5 years ago, shortly after I got here, because I discovered that even though the school was about 100 years old and had any number of certificates, all of them very good, there wasn't one on diplomacy. And there were students who were trying to build a multifunctional, multidisciplinary curriculum to get themselves ready to go into global public service. But they didn't have any guidance, and they didn't have a lot of encouragement, and they didn't get any recognition for it. And so we created the certificate so you would get encouragement, support, and recognition for building a more multidisciplinary and multifunctional, multi-regional, however you want to look at it, curriculum. All of the programs here are fabulous, and we've got many of them represented here, along with conflict resolution. But you can spend 2 years here within your program doing that program, and it will be a very good degree. There's no question about it. But they tend to be somewhat insular. And when you get into global public service, either diplomacy, ours or someone else's, into the NGO world, the think tank world, any of these sort of global policy-focused careers, you are going to be working with a multitude of agendas and stakeholders who are going to bring different perspectives. If you're working on conflict resolution, you have to understand civil military. You have to understand, if you're working on migration, what drives migration and how does migration impact the receiving countries. All of these things play together, and if you don't really have at least a basic familiarity and a basic literacy in them, and you just try to solve a problem through a very valid but narrow aperture, you're not going to be able to be very effective. The other thing that will happen when you get out into your careers is you may start off working in your area of expertise. You will get changed. It will move. Careers shift all over the place. And to kind of just give you a brief example, I started the Foreign Service with a degree in Chinese studies, working on Chinese domestic politics. I ended up in the Middle East working on security, counterterrorism, governance, and women's issues. So I went a long way from my academic background to where my career landed me. And I needed to be able to adapt, and adapt very quickly. I not only changed bureaus from Asia to the Middle East, but I spent several years working on East Africa, which is a wholly new part of the world for me. And so what we're really trying to do is help you develop the intellectual skills to be adaptive to what you're going to face over the 20, 30 years of your career in probably a multitude of organizations and different areas. So we're not so much trying to teach, to work on the what's of academic world, but more the whys and the how. And so you can take these skills and adapt them anywhere. As a small example, I had a student at another university who took one of my capstones, and that one happened to be on how should the U.S. rebalance its relationship with the Arab Gulf states? It's a big issue, hasn't been solved yet. She does go into the Foreign Service, and even though she was a Latin Americanist who had taken a course on the Arab Gulf states, she ended up working on the Mali desk, wholly new part of the world. First thing they did is have her backbench at an NSC meeting, and the topic at the NSC meeting was, how should the U.S. rebalance its relationship with the Sahel states? And I got this text from her going, I have no idea what the answer is, but I understand the question. And I understand the pieces and the players and the issues that we need to think about if we're going to do this for a region. And that's what the certificate is about. We do start with the foundation course. As you know, we don't do the foundation course. We give you a list of foundation courses. You have to take one of them either last semester or this semester, and you have to get an A or an A-. Then there's the 4 electives, and then there's the Capstone course, and that you take your second semester of your second year. And in the Capstone course, we really do try to take this idea of taking a multiplicity of viewpoints and a multiplicity of stakeholders, putting them on one intractable problem, and then trying to come up with a comprehensive approach. In many cases, the capstone will be on an issue you know nothing about. It may even be an issue you didn't even think you were interested in. That's really not the point. The point is, can you take what you've learned in 2 years here, what you brought in here from your work experience and what you learned undergraduate and just who you are, and apply it to a new problem. And as an example, a couple of years ago, we had the former Assistant Secretary for Africa doing one on the political solution to South Sudan. Very few people know about South Sudan. I don't. 2 of the students in the capstone actually came from the Latin America program here, had worked on transitional justice in Colombia. They end up working on South Sudan. First, they had to find it on a map. But the whole purpose for them was to take what they knew about not just the theory of transitional justice, but how was it practiced in Colombia, what worked, what didn't work, and then how do I apply it to another country? How do I apply it to another situation? So those are the intellectual skills that we're trying to encourage you, give you support, give you guidance, and then at the end of the day, give you recognition with a certificate. So that's what the certificate is about. The application is due February 1st, as you all know. And it's really kind of 2 main pieces. One is the essay, where I really just want to hear from you. How does what the certificate is trying to do, what we're trying to offer to complement what you get in your programs, how does that fit with where you see yourself going? How do you see it as a complement? What is it bringing to what you could otherwise get very well in your own program? And then we ask you to put down your 4 electives. I've never quite come up with exactly the right way to describe it, but what I'm looking for are courses that take you out of your comfort zone. So if you're in series and you have been focusing very much on Russia, taking some courses on China or taking some courses on NATO, I'm not asking you to take a course that has no connection whatsoever to anything you've ever done. Although if you want to do that, I think that's neat. But something that takes where your comfort zone is and either regionally or functionally looks at it from another angle. And one example would be, if we don't have anybody from Asian studies here, but if you were Asian studies, you focused a lot on China, and you were interested in China's efforts in Africa, good. That's a good thing to do. But what I want you to do is take it from the Africa program, where you're taking it from the African point of view as opposed to the Chinese point of view. So it's that kind of thinking outside your box, your comfort zone, your concentration. The courses you put down are illustrative, because we don't know next year what courses are going to be offered, what courses you will be able to get into. So it's not a contract. If you put down 4 courses and something new pops up next year that actually answers the question better, or a course you put down, the professor is on sabbatical next year, you're not contractually obligated to those 4 courses. It just gives me an idea of how you're thinking of what kind of courses would add to your concentration, would get you outside the box, would get you out of your comfort zone, however you want to put it. So that's what I'm looking for in that. So that's kind of the short version, and what I want to do, the whole point of this, is to answer any questions or concerns that you have. So, is there a microphone that has to be? Yes. May we have the microphone, please? We'll just sort of drop it with Mr. Katani here, and then I'm not saying you have to ask the first question. I just want to get it into the middle. If you want to, you may.
Sure. I'm very curious to hear from you regarding Yemen.
Yes.
So if you want to give us some more insights about your time there and with the current situation, it would be interesting to hear from you. What do you actually think about what's going on in Yemen now, regarding, of course, the war, mainly?
Sure. Well, it's a little bit off topic for this, except for the fact that one of the capstones that we do every year is one that I teach, which is on Yemen. And and obviously everybody who takes my Yemen capstone doesn't know very much about it going in. Very few people know about Yemen. And we look at what are the roots of the crisis going way back. Who are the Yemenis? They're not Saudis, they're not Egyptians, they're not Somalis, they're Yemeni. So what does that mean? Why did the country go from fragile to fail? What are Saudi Arabia, Emirati, and other interests and agendas? Why did they get involved in this war? What have been the cost of the war? The humanitarian catastrophe has been, horrific. 1 child dies every 12 minutes in Yemen. I mean, that's a staggering statistic. And how do we get out of it? Which is going to have to be a cessation of the hostilities. It's going to have to be the Saudis backing off of the air campaign. It's going to be conflict resolution. It's going to be, coming up with a legitimate political settlement, not just a ceasefire. And what we learned in Sudan is that if you just end the fighting, but you don't come up with a political resolution, you're going to be right back fighting again in a couple of years, if not a couple of months. I do think it's possible. I'm a diplomat, and diplomats have to be studiously pragmatic on what can be done and constantly optimistic that something can be done. If you just look at a problem and say it's intractable, it's never been solved, okay, I write them off. And you hear this sometimes with, they've been fighting for 100 years, 200 years, 500 years. If you were looking at Northern Ireland a couple of decades ago, you would have said, well, the Catholics and the Protestants have been at each other for 800 years. So how could we possibly solve this? And the diplomat looks at the realities and then tries to find a way to create an opportunity. So I do think it will be solved, but it's first a cessation of the hostilities, second, humanitarian intervention, and then a credible political settlement that brings the country together. It's going to take a massive amount of money, but it's a country worth saving, and I think a country that can be saved. So anything longer than that, you're going to have to sign up for the certificate, and then you can take my capstone next spring. And so, but using that capstone as an example, I need people who know conflict resolution, transitional justice. How do you bring investment into development work? What is the role of maybe China's One Belt and One Road? Is that a positive or a negative? What are Saudi Arabia and the Emirates' real agendas? How do they fit with what Yemen wants to do? And so you've got politics, you've got security, you've got development, you've got how do you rebuild the internal Yemeni state? What is the role of international actors? And so you can take something like this for a capstone, and there is probably nothing that any of you are actually focused on or interested in that I couldn't make it fit into the Yemen capstone or any of the other ones that we have. And that's the purpose of it. But other than that, we would have to have a very long conversation because my Yemen class is 13 weeks long. So I can talk 13 times 2.5 hours about Yemen. So we're not going to do that here. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Could you speak a little bit more about, it says in the handout here about an internship requirement with a governmental or international organization. Could you speak a little bit more about that and what types of organizations that I guess either students have done in the past or what you're looking for as well?
That's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. We're looking for an internship, or it can be previous professional experience, because I know you all come in with, you're already in the Japanese Foreign Service, so we will count that. You don't have to do an internship in addition. With an organization, if it's a diplomatic organization, that's great. If you have an internship at state or you come from a foreign ministry, easy box to check. But also organizations that either seek to influence diplomatic decision-making, and that can be a think tank, or an organization that is affected by diplomatic decision-making, and that might be an NGO. So working for someone like Mercy Corps, they work all over the world. What kind of policy decisions are made affects what Mercy Corps can do. And Mercy Corps works very hard to also shape policy. The same thing with a think tank or an international organization. So I'm defining it very broadly, because I also know that that's the range of careers that you're going to go to. Not everyone will end up in the Foreign Service. Not everybody wants to, and not everybody is able to. But there is a whole range of careers out there that are global public service. And the intellectual skills that we're talking about in this certificate apply across the board. So if I'm sort of thinking about what kind of careers we're trying to help prepare you for, then those are the kinds of institutions that we would count. Is there one in particular you're thinking of?
Not in particular,
okay.
Just wondering.
You know, hedge funds, probably not. Not that I have anything against hedge funds, or at least that's a different topic. But I'm pretty open to, you know, what counts. And maybe kind of a follow-up answer to your question is where have some of our graduates gone? They're working at the European Council of Foreign Relations. They're at organizations like NDI and IRI. They're working for Refugees International. Some of them are in the State Department. Some of them are in the military. They have gone to about as broad as range of careers. Some are working on the Hill as legislative assistants on foreign policy. So that breadth of organizations that count for an internship pretty much reflects where they end up as well. Sure. Any other questions? Did I answer you? Yes, ma'am. What? Please wait.
Hi. I have a question regarding the mentorship of the program or the institute.
Right.
How do we engage with practitioners or faculty members for additional professional guidance?
Right. This is one of the Institute's strong suits. I personally direct this program, and so I will always be available to talk about what coursework would be appropriate, what you're thinking about in terms of your career, what you're thinking about in terms of your internship. So I am I'm not just the director of the Institute, I'm the director of this program. The Institute also has, every year, 4 senior State Department officials, usually 2 ambassadors and 2 who are just 2 rungs down from that, FSO2s, if that means anything. And then we also have 3 senior military officers who work on the policy and strategy side. And they are always available to you. When they are looking for these fellowships with us, one of the things that they always say that they want to do is to engage with and mentor students. So they love it when you contact them. They will adore to spend all the time that you want. If you have a very particular question or a very niche career issue, we will also try to put you in contact with people we know around town. So if we don't really have somebody who really knows, if you wanted to go to work for USAID, I know about USAID, I've worked with them around the world, but I don't really know their personnel system that well. But we know people we can put you in touch with. And so I try to make this as hands-on as you want. What I do not really want is for you to sign up on February 1st, be accepted, take your courses, show up for a capstone, and then walk away. You can do that, but that's not kind of what I'm looking for. Because we also want to get you engaged with students from programs that you otherwise wouldn't meet, who have interests and perspectives that you might not otherwise be able to talk about. So sometimes we're better at this than others, but we try to have, some taco and beer parties in our backyard. Things like that, just that have absolutely no structure, no substance to them whatsoever. Sometimes you have to do that in life. We also include you in some of the events that we host. Every year we host an award for excellence in the conduct of diplomacy. And this year it's going to be Masha Jovanovic. That was kind of a no-brainer on our part. But we've had the head of the UN Human Rights Commission. We've had Madeleine Albright. Oddly enough, for all the time that she's been here and we've been here, we never gave her that award. But we bring in, people from abroad. We have guest speakers, a distinguished practitioner series, which we hold here. And you all are given the first invitations, the first cut at being able to come. And so we do try to have either events specifically for you, or when we have larger events, you're the first invites. And then kind of when we found out how many of you are coming, then we might go out one more circle. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question regarding the 4 electives from outside your program of study, which I know you said it wasn't an exact science, but what exactly does that mean for something like MSFS, which is more generalist and not focused?
Yeah. It could mean one of 2 things, because MSFS is the great generalist degree, which is fine. You may have your own particular specialty or area of focus. And so some of this is just kind of getting you out of that. Or if you really are a great generalist, it is maybe let's find some focus for you. And not necessarily to make you an area specialist or to make you a functional specialist, but to kind of give you, let's take an issue and look at it from another couple of different angles. So we'll kind of shape it that way. And I generally meet with almost I try to meet with every single one of you after you've been accepted to really kind of talk through who are you? What is your area of focus? What is your area of interest? What is your career aspirations? And then let's talk through what fits you. And so every certificate student has a different collection of courses. There is absolutely no one size fits all. And I might wave you off of something. I would even say that for some of you who are really into the social sciences, you need a good quantitative analysis course, which is something I would never do because me and numbers don't get along. But I will work with you to come up with what is good for you from what you tell me about you. So that's what we're going to do. So it's different for everybody. And that prompted a question. Oh, I know. Somebody here was looking at the certificate in refugees and migration. You were. I thought it was you, but I wasn't sure. A lot of people do both of our certificates. That's a very common pairing. And I will say the one thing we do if you are, let's say you're MSFS and you're a grand generalist and you know you're a little bit too general, so you want to get 2 certificates, we will figure out how to double count them. Double count as many courses as we possibly can. The point of the certificate is not to add an extra semester to your academic career. That's not the point of it. So we'll also work to make sure that it fits your requirements and it fits within 2 years. So, and we have had a number of students who have done the refugee migration one and ours. We've had some who have done us and the international business, or us and maybe one of the regionals. So there is a way to do them both. And we also will work with, make sure that we're not overloading or conflicting. We don't have anyone here, but this is on tape, from like the Mages program where they've got their own kind of big paper. And we work with the Mages students so that what they do in the capstone isn't a double burden, but works off of the research that they've done for their Mages project. And it's, you do this body of knowledge, of research, this much of it you use for Mages. And if you've ever done a big paper, there's always a couple of issues you can't quite get to that you wish you could. Well, we'll figure out how to get that into the capstone. So our object is not to kill you academically. That's not the goal. Some others have practicums. We will work with your academic coordinator and advisor to make sure that what you need to do for us and what you need to do for your others are coordinated and complement each other. Ma'am.
How have students gotten into courses outside of their main department, and is there any kind of priority?
Oh, this is one of my big frustrations. SSP has made it much harder for MSFS to get into their classes, and I think MSFS is starting to, I don't know about other walls that we're building, but there's kind of this wall going between SSP and MSFS. And I don't know if my job is to, either burrow a hole under it or find a ladder over it. I do think I need to get more engaged on that because it is becoming an increasing problem. Usually there's some way around it, or there's a course in another program. We'll work with you on that. And I am very much aware that it's a bigger problem than just ISD, but we'll work on that. Yeah. This gentleman again, and then this lady again.
Great. So I just had a question more generally speaking
Yes.
about the timeline of the application. Like, what should we expect post February 1st with the deadline?
In other words, how soon will I actually get around to reading these things?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, I guess more or less, like, what type of engagement, like, if we're accepted with the program, would happen in the first year.
Right. I will read them as quickly as I can. In between all, in my voluminous spare time. A couple of things will happen. If you've already taken the foundation course and you've gotten the requisite grade and, the essay is compelling and your illustrative electives make sense to me, you'll just be accepted, and you'll get that pretty quickly. If it's pretty close to what I'm looking for, but maybe the electives aren't quite, you sort of got to the edge of the box, but you didn't quite get over and out of it, I might ask to have you come in and talk to me and just talk it through and see if you're thinking bigger, you just didn't know quite where to look or kind of what courses. If you are currently in the foundation course, so you just don't have the grade yet, you'll be given a provisional acceptance, which you're basically in the certificate. I will assume you're going to get the A or A minus until you prove otherwise. And most students do. So you'll either get a full acceptance up front, you'll get a provisional acceptance pending your foundation course grade, or we might have a conversation and then depending on where the foundation course is, acceptance. And you'll get that. You'll certainly get it. You'll get it in February because you need to know what your status is so that you know what courses to sign up for spring. So I'm aware of that academic requirement. Yes, ma'am. And then I'll, you've already got the mic, so you and then you.
This is very specific to very few students, but I know it says to take the foundational course on your first year. Is there exceptions for dual degree students who are here more than 2 years?
Yes. If you are a dual degree student, or if you're on like an extended program of some description, there are some students who are have signed up for a program that's more than 2 years. We also have students who start in December or start in January, and so their first year is a slightly different it's a different time block. We'll work with that. If there's a compelling reason you weren't able to take the foundation course, particularly if you're dual degree, we will, again, come see me, we'll talk about it, we'll work it through. So for dual degree, we'll work around it. There are some programs, I know both Latin America and Asia have accelerated 18-month programs. And so for them, they actually have to come and see me in the fall. So this video is a little bit late because they actually have to take the capstone in the second semester of their first year because they're not going to be around the following spring. I will work with you to make it work for you. You just need to come and see me and say, I understand the nice, the vanilla version, except I'm not. And so how do we make this work? Come see me, we'll talk about it, we'll see. We've also had students who were accepted in their first year, and then they got a Boudin fellowship. So we just put it on hold for a year, and they'll finish it when they come back. So we'll work with you. We want to make this work. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So with regards to the 2 electives that have to be outside of our program, do you want those 2 electives to be somewhat related to one another, either both about kind of the same subject, whether it's one region or about a diplomatic issue?
They should be related to what you you concentrate on. But it should be from a different angle. And what that's going to mean, I would have to sit down and talk with you and see. Or it may be, you're in series, is it right? It may be just sort of finding something that relates, but isn't so directly connected that you would have thought of it initially. But yeah, and sometimes one of the best things that you can do, since you're in this wonderful candy store, even if some of the cases are locked, this wonderful candy store of programs, is to take a course on something that, I never thought about that. And one of two things will happen. You'll either discover there's something else that you're interested in beyond what you've been focused on, or you will decide, I'm actually not interested in that. And I had a student who was in an area studies and did something in a totally different area. And at the end of the semester, did well and said, I have no interest in that ever again. Learned something, did something different with her brain, and then kind of went, okay, box checked, moving back to, let's go back to what I actually like. And that's a perfectly fine thing to do. Hello. It's one of my students. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I have two questions. The first one is, I was wondering, does every semester have the capstone course or just in the spring semester? And the second one is, I'm an international student, and how do I meet the SFS language competency requirement?
You just passed the competency requirement because you're an international student and your second language is English.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. So it's not your own language plus English, and then you've got to go get something else. If you are an international student, you've already done the language proficiency. But the capstones are only in the spring.
And actually, my program is 1 year and a half, so could I have methods to do it?
Oops.
Yeah.
So you're like 2/3 of the way through your program. You're going to graduate in December?
Yeah. Could I take the capstone course in this semester, in the first year?
Yes, you could, but you would have to get into a capstone like right now.
Yeah.
Which we could probably arrange. We need to talk.
Okay, yeah.
Like right after this.
Okay, yeah.
Don't go away. We would have to fix that now. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I would like to hear previous students' feedback or stories who completed this certificate. For example, because I gained this experience or these skills by pursuing this certificate, I was able to solve this issue, or my project was successful. I would like to hear more concrete example. After completion of this certificate, what kind of person who I can be?
That's a very interesting question. Since the program's only 5 years old, we actually have, I think last May's graduating class, we're now up to like 100 and something, but just barely over 100 alumni. We could absolutely put you in touch with some of our graduates. We do have a kind of a soft alumni program. And if you contacted Wei, and I should have introduced and acknowledged Wei. Wei is our event and communication manager, and can give you a list of some of our alumni, and you can reach out to them. We also do have a couple of people who did take the capstone in their first year, and they're here on campus. You could talk with them. But we can, if you would like to talk to an alum, we can do that. I think that's a very good idea, and we hadn't thought about that. So thank you. Sure. And so if anyone else is interested, WZ110 at georgetown.edu, or you can contact me. But we can make that work. That's a good idea. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? You're coming up with some good ones, so I'm glad we are capturing this on tape. Okay. If you have any follow-on questions, or you were just way too shy to ask a question in front of others, you have my email. Contact me, and I'd be more than willing to, answer some simple questions by email, maybe something more complex or individual. We can find some time to sit down and talk. But I do look forward to your applications. Always enjoy reading what kind of amazing people show up here and how I might be able to help them be even more amazinger or something like that. So thank you all for coming. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.